Well, good morning. This is the Lew Rockwell Show, and it's a great honor to have as our guest this morning Sibel Edmonds. Sibel is an editor, publisher of Boiling Frogs Post. She's founder and president of the National Security Whistleblowers Coalition, author of the acclaimed book Classified Woman, The Sibel Edmonds Story, and a political spy thriller, The Lone Gladio. Sibel got in trouble when she was a language specialist for the FBI's Washington field office, and during her work with the Bureau, she discovered and reported serious acts of security breaches, cover-ups, and intentional blocking of intelligence that had national security implications. After she reported these acts to FBI management, they retaliated against her and ultimately fired her, and she was silenced by the federal government, very unusual even for this bunch. She was gagged. And so she's a proven truth teller, a proven person of great bravery, and also a great expert on Turkey and the whole region. And so, Sibel, I want to talk to you today about, what the heck has been happening in Turkey. The coup against Erdogan, what you think did happen then, what you think the U.S. CIA role was in all of this, if there was such a thing. And, of course, I figure there always is such a thing. And also what you think about the future. Is there going to be another coup? Will Turkey have better relations with Russia against what the U.S. wants? Will they not be so nasty to Syria? I mean, so tell me everything, Sibel.
Hi, Lou, and thank you for having me back. Interestingly, you and I had a long discussion on Turkey. It was less than a year ago, and we talked about the crises in Turkey. And at the time, you asked me to look into the future and engage in some sort of prediction of what I saw was coming as far as President Erdogan there was concerned and Turkish politics. And I didn't have really crystal balls, but because I was in Turkey last summer, and while there, I spoke with many people. I interviewed some people, including people who have connections to the military. I stated that at the rate things were going, the coming event for Turkey was going to be another coup attempt. And I said that Turkey is not really unfamiliar to the issue of coups. We have had 5 coups in Turkey just in less than 4 decades. We had the 1980 coups, which was decided and implemented by NATO and the U.S. using Turkish military. So we went into military regime mode, and we kind of in Turkey stayed in that mode, even though we had elections and some sort of symbolic government administrations. Everybody knew that the people in charge in Turkey were the military. And those military members, they were not accountable or answerable to anyone but NATO and USA. Who was the president was besides the point. Well, our prediction came true, and we did go through unexpectedly for people, but expectedly for us, this failed coup attempt. And one of the reasons I had cited during our previous conversation was that the United States, NATO, especially CIA through its Mullah Fethullah Gulen, who is this cleric, this extremist Islamic cleric who came to the United States in 1997 while he was wanted in Turkey for organizing movements to bring in Sharia laws in Turkey. And then he was flown from Turkey with a CIA Gulfstream plane into the United States. Since 1997, he's been residing here. He has set up several foundations and NGOs. He currently owns the largest United States charter school chains, and his net worth is placed above $22 billion. So you're looking at this imam, this Sharia guy, who was wanted by the secular government in Turkey for his terrorism enticement and for his Sharia law activities, not only being harbored, by the U.S. in the United States, but also being placed in these positions and getting to this $22 billion net worth that no one knows where it comes from. To this date, well, a lot of money laundering is involved, revenue from the heroin smuggling is involved, and of course, by becoming the largest charter school operator. This is a Turkish guy. He's not even a U.S. citizen. In the United States, they can money launder and pour, and this is U.S. government, tens of millions of dollars into his organization that are unaccounted for under the guise of charter school operations. So his funding has many sources. Back to my point, these people, CIA, NATO, USA, through Gulen, have been trying to undermine Erdogan's government since 2012. This rift started between Erdogan, Turkish president, and Gulen. And it was part of it, the power game, who is more popular in Turkey, who has more power. Because before that, Gulen was a supporter of Erdogan's government in Turkey. In fact, Gulen played a major role by lining up his support behind Erdogan, as a CIA stooge, to even get him elected. And once he was elected, he became very, very popular, the most popular Turkish president in the history of Turkey, right? Erdogan. So he got to this point, President Erdogan saying, I'm popular enough, I have enough prominence, I don't have to bow to this guy, to CIA's Gulen. I am more important. I have more power. That kind of power struggles that we see throughout the histories when it comes to nations and their leaders. And with the rift starting in 2012, we started seeing these activities, operations in Turkey. Some major protests were organized. They used the environmentalism as cover people, but that was organized and funded and directed mainly by the CIA, by Soros NGOs inside Turkey, and Soros plays a major role in Turkey, and by Fethullah Gulen movements, and asking for overthrow of, throwing Erdogan regime, Erdogan government. It didn't work because still by then, close to 80% of the public, they supported Erdogan. Those protests didn't do much damage. So Erdogan recovered. When that didn't work, during his last elections last year, the United States mainstream media, together with their propaganda NGOs, they started this intense campaign, PR campaign against Erdogan. They went from depicting Erdogan as one of the top leaders in the world. They made US media, President Erdogan, they made him the cover page of Time magazine. It was how great he was, what a fantastic leader he was, how he has just improved Turkey's economy, how his version of Islam is what the United States envisions for the rest of the Middle East. Then fast forward to 2013, when the rift between United States CIA Gulen and Erdogan started occurring, the same man that they sugarcoated suddenly became one of the top evils in the world. How he is totally atrocious when it comes to media freedom and freedom of speech. Again, via their NGOs, Soros NGOs in Turkey, here in the United States, via Gulen movement. How he was behind all the terrorism, ISIS, Syria. Suddenly they took this man that they had put over that pedestal, on top of that pedestal. It was almost like overnight, Lew. Suddenly he became world's greatest atrocious dictator. And they went through this intense campaign trying to sway the public opinion around the world, but mainly in Turkey, by fueling the opposition against Erdogan, hoping that he would lose during the elections. They also resorted to some rigging. They did everything they could to unseat Erdogan, And that didn't work last year. So when you and I, because Erdogan still maintained his popularity, lower than the years previous to that, but still he got the majority and he maintained his power. So with that attempt failed, with the previous attempt, the protests that they were doing, internal chaos that they wanted to create through George Soros, with that failing, This was when you and I talked, and I said the next step is, since the other two attempts failed, they are going to go about bringing a coup back into Turkey. They're gonna execute a coup. And when I said this during your show, I also was with James Corbett. I said the same thing, and I predicted that within a year or less, they were going to attempt coup. I said they're either going to assassinate him or they're going to bring about a coup. This was when people were pointing finger at me and laughing, saying that's ridiculous, there will never be a coup. And that even from people in Turkey, they thought it was a radical idea. It was outrageous. It was more like a conspiracy theory. And I said, all you have to do is you have to look at Turkish history, you have to look at the context, and you have to look at what has been taking place. When you do, they do. This is what US does with their regime installation, with their regime removal. We've been in this business for almost a century now, Lou. I can't think of a single country, maybe during the history, British Empire, who has done as much interference, aggression, and disrespect of sovereignty as we have done. Okay? I mean, we don't just softly meddle by using IMF and World Bank. We install military bases. We create coups. We create revolutions. We assassinate leaders. We put media propaganda. And we are busy meddling with sovereign nations' internal politics. So when we, the Americans, say, why we have so many enemies? Why do they hate us? All we have to do is look and see what our government, what the military-industrial complex has been doing on our behalf, in our name, around the world. Millions of lives we have taken away, from Vietnam War to Iraq War to Afghanistan. Millions of lives. Name one country, one nation that has engaged at this level of aggression consistently for this long. We have made the history in the history of humankind as a nation, and it's something to be ashamed of. It is something to rebel against. It's not something to be proud of. And it has been facilitated, especially in the past few decades, by our media. The tentacles attached to this war machine, to this aggressive machine that is sucking up our resources, our tax money, our welfare as human, as the residents of this country, and putting it into wars of aggression that does not benefit anyone but a handful, a very few people, a very few mega corporations. And consistently, we have been doing it, and the reason they have been maintaining it is thanks to the media. So I said the coup is coming to Turkey. And that day, on July 15th, I got the notice on my phone that Turkey was going through a coup. That day, Lou, I sat behind my computer for 6 hours straight. They had some sort of a blackout in Turkey, but most people in Turkey, unlike what the media wants to present here, they were actually able, through their VPN, connect to Twitter. So Twitter was not down. The phone lines were not down. So I was, on one hand, receiving information from people on the ground, watching the Twitters, okay, and paying attention to how this whole coup attempt was in play, how it was taking place. So with one of our our news organization partner, we were looking at everything, and I came across this tweet, okay, that popped up on the Twitter, and within like a few minutes, there were tens of thousands of retweets, putting out this information saying, President Erdogan has fled Turkey. His plane is hovering over Germany, and he's trying to seek asylum, land in Germany, and German Prime Minister was declining his request. Then I did Google News search, and lo and behold, all these articles from US mainstream media and so-called alternative like Daily Beast and New York Times, Washington Post, to global mainstream media, Guardian UK, they had update, Turkish president on the run. He fled Turkey. His plane is making circles over Germany, trying to land, and he is seeking asylum. Well, knowing about intelligence operations and warfare tactics, I mean, the first thing you do in wars, or when you are implementing a coup, is you demoralize the public so they would give up by either actually doing it, like assassinating their leader or imprisoning their leader. I mean, when I say assassinating, think Gaddafi. When I say imprisoning, think Mubarak. Or you put information out and show their leader as someone who has given up, is a coward, and is running from his country and leaving the people to suffer the consequences, right? This is a widely used intelligence operation tactic that has been implemented throughout the history. You take out the leadership and people will resort to despair. They say it's over. They say it's over. Let's put down our arms. Let's stop resistance. It's over. Well, that was the intention of this tweet, right? So we did research and we started going to the root, saying where in the world this started, who put it out, right? Because I'm getting news from Turkey and it says Turkish president has communicated via cell phone with the public. He's going to be in Istanbul in less than 1 hour and holding a press conference. So as we started tracing this with my partner Spiros Skouras for NewsBud, our news organization, we saw that everybody was linking it to NBC News. That NBC News had put out this article and broadcast telling public, not only in the United States, but this is being broadcast around the world, tweeted, that their senior Pentagon military official source, and this is NBC's senior Pentagon source, okay, has told NBC with certainty that Erdogan has fled his country and he is about to get asylum in Germany.
I remember hearing this. I remember hearing that
right.
from NBC. Yes.
So this was packaged, concocted inside Pentagon, okay? A senior, not a mid-level, a senior Pentagon official who's on the payroll of NBC. They have packaged it, they had given it to NBC, and NBC had put it out, right? And their producer, Kyle Griffin for MSNBC, was like putting all these tweets saying, this is what's happening to Erdogan. And this was what millions of people around the world were retweeting. Now, as soon as information started coming from Turkey, and we put it out, circulated too, that Erdogan was holding a press conference in Istanbul. Do you know what happened, Lew?
Tell me.
NBC deleted their article and all traces of it. Now you go to all these mainstream media outlets, they have NBC linked to NBC. You click on the link, this page no longer is available. But not only that, they have deleted and erased all cache for that article. So even the world's top experts outside these agencies who would always dig up and bring it out, they were unable to find it. It's nowhere to be seen. It is in a black hole, totally deleted.
No, it's very similar to when they killed Osama bin Laden, or if that's really the story.
Of course, when they said Gaddafi was on the plane and he was going to another African country seeking asylum, that was a lie too. Nobody confronted them. And even when it came out, they are so shameless. They are so spineless, Lew. Journalistic ethics guidelines says when you know that you have put false information, what do? You come out, you issue official retraction. You say, we apologize. This information that we concocted, we put out there, we circulated was false, and it was given to us by our Pentagon senior official. We fired him. He's no longer our source. He sold us a package lie, right? NBC did no such a thing. They went quiet and they deleted their cache.
Sibel, you're doing great work, as you always do, very courageous and wonderful work. But tell us, what do you think is going to be happening in Turkey? Will there be another coup? Is it really true that there are some Navy ships, quote unquote, missing? Or what's going on with the purges?
I have been reading that 42 choppers have been missing. Yet yesterday, I read these updates saying that all vessels are accounted for and they have been able to account for the choppers. So that's the latest news I have received from Turkey. Can I vouch for it? Absolutely not. But as far as coup, my take, and I'm going to offer this as hypothesis, not something that I can back with 100% certainty, just like the prediction I had for this coup would be, this was not designed as a major full force coup. It almost appears as a warm-up coup, maybe in order to take the nation's pulse to see what would happen if we were to go and have the real coup implemented, which we want. I mean, not you and I, but the CIA/NATO Gulen network, to see what kind of support the coup would get, what kind of support really Erdogan has, and what would happen if we go for a real coup. The fact that they want to unseat Erdogan, okay, and this is CIA, NATO, they want him they want to see him replaced, and none of the other tactics work. I believe something else is coming up. And the indicators for this prediction is, look, Lew, after World War II, like we, the United States, with this disgusting organization called NATO that should have been dismantled in 1991 with the end of the Soviet Union, but it's been expanding. Now we have NATO satellite offices in Kuwait and Qatar and Bahrain. I mean, what does that North Atlantic even mean any longer in that damn title? I mean, think about it. North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and then you have offices in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and you have it in Dubai and in Kuwait. What is really NATO about? Anyhow, I don't want to get sidetracked on this, but the indicator is we, NATO, CIA, we decided to make Turkey also a nuclear weapon nation. And we kept it quiet. We installed close to 100 major nuclear warheads in our base, Incirlik base, U.S. NATO base in Turkey, which is supposedly currently out of power. Okay, suddenly we always advertised it as the world's securest base with the amazing level of security, right? And we never talked about it. Anytime the topic came in the last half century about how about the fact that in Turkey we have, and this is the known number because the number supposedly is much higher. A nation, especially its strategic geographic location, especially with some of the political volatile country that we are looking at, hundreds of nuclear warheads being there, it kind of put people in this unease, right? So it has been one of those taboo topics, like Israel's nuke when they were gathering Israel. Same thing with Turkey. You never heard, ever, in half a century, U.S. media keep talking about nuclear warheads in Turkey, nuclear weapons in Turkey. Now, after the failed attempted coup, go and see how suddenly all these tentacles, CIA tentacles, are pointing to the fact that it is so dangerous, this government in Turkey and all the things with ISIS being in the border with Syria and the ISIS threat, because Turkey currently houses 92 nuclear warheads. Just like parrots, all of them are putting it out there. This is another warfare. This is another psychological warfare. Now they are creating the pretext for officially for US, NATO, CIA, dark forces to go and take over the country and having like an officially announced coup. You know why, people? Because think about ISIS getting their hands on these nuclear warheads, these 90 plus nuclear weapons. See? You see what they're doing, Lew?
Nobody ever has been talking about the fact that this is a threat to Russia. These are bombs right near the Russian border. And of course, we flipped out when that happened in Cuba, but of course, it's always okay to do it to U.S. adversaries or people the U.S. hates.
This is similar, Lew, to exactly the same thing they did with this leader on the run thing. Now they are planting this and everybody is parroting it. So everybody's going to be worried about when are we going to go and invade Turkey because they have 90 plus nuclear warheads and ISIS is going to get it. They don't say these warheads have been there for 50 years. It has survived all sorts of coups in Turkey. It has survived the whole Cold War era in Turkey. As you just said, look at Turkey's position, geographic position. And we never were worried about these. Turkey went through anarchy period in 1970s. It was intense with some Soviet elements in there. We never said we were worried about nuclear warheads in Turkey. So these nuclear warheads survived 50 years of Cold War, anarchy period, 5 coups, war with Iraq with Saddam Hussein. Turkey is right there, northern Iraq, Turkish southern border. It's less than several hundred miles from where these nuclear warheads were. It survived Saddam Hussein. Okay? It has survived Iran, another neighboring country in Turkey. But lo and behold, hallelujah, suddenly these warheads in Turkey are in volatile position. This is basically preparing the grounds, putting out the pretext to say for the next attempt to be justified in the name of we as US had responsibility to secure these nuclear warheads by bringing a stable regime planted in there and take out this guy. That's my prediction. And I believe it's going to be played over and over again. They played these vessels, they played these choppers, and then they paired it up suddenly, this hush-hush topic of nuclear warheads, weapons in Turkey. See, you put as an analyst these elements together, you see the context and the history of what they've been doing, then it is not difficult to predict that this is creating pretext for the real coup when they're going to get the consent from the Americans, from the NATO countries saying, go please, invade them and secure these nuclear warheads because those ISIS guys with their swords and knife are going to go inside that base and they're going to take over these nuclear warheads.
One more thing. Tell me what you think the migrant question is going to be affected by all of this. Will Turkey be incorporated into the EU as the U.S. seems to want, once there's, as you put it, a stable, entirely U.S.-controlled government? Will they send all their refugees that are now in Turkey into Europe? That's what, I think probably Mr. Soros wants and has been working for and advocating.
You answered that question. You're absolutely, that's the goal. But they are also busy, Mr. Soros, with his NGOs. If you look at the latest news, you see that it says Erdogan has suspended human rights during this emergency period for the next 2-3 months, which puts their application for EU membership on hold because. So let me explain this, another psychological warfare tactic and the propaganda originating by Mr. Soros's organizations. Okay, so Turkey used to have death penalty, okay? When they applied for EU membership, one of the conditions that EU placed on Turkey, okay, was that you have to ban and abandon your death penalty. So Turkey, because they wanted to become a member of EU, they basically banned and they stopped death penalty, okay? So now Erdogan rounded up thousands of people. And these people, Erdogan has had the list of these people in the military, in the Turkish military force, in Turkish police force, in courts, even in parliament. And these are the people who are funded by Gulen, CIA's Gulen. They have been the agitators, they have been the opposition, and some of them participated in this coup. But Erdogan didn't get these names right after the coup. Erdogan has had these names for several years. He attempted with Ergenekon and everything, remember when that was happening, to round up a few of these people. But because Gulen and CIA and George Soros NGOs have big-time control on Turkish media, that was being a really bad PR for Erdogan because every time he would have facts, evidence that these people were agitators and they were on the payroll, they were operatives, he would prosecute them or jail them, there would be this outcry. He's being a dictator. He's rounding up voices of opposition. So he was not enjoying great public support to come down really hot and heavy on these groups, right? And they are beyond voices of opposition. You're looking at operatives, okay? Now, this is why people say, oh, Erdogan staged it. He didn't stage it. That's not the case. But I would say, is it highly possible that Erdogan and his administration had a foreknowledge that this was going to take place? I would say, Lew, that's likely. Because it's very hard to keep something like this quiet that has been in plan for 6 months, okay? And they have their own infiltrators and insiders too. So I believe this was a political maneuver, possibly, okay? A smart one, a smart strategic maneuver. It's like, you're in war. One of the strategy is you tell all your soldiers, go hide in the houses and leave your square and your town square empty. In the middle of the night, have enemy pour in, and then you come from behind and you get them. The warfare tactic. This may be that kind of a situation where they said, let's let them come in and implement their planned coup, right? And then we'll come and we'll close in and we'll stop them. And then this will give us, our administration, the needed public support and pretext, okay, and justification for what we've been wanting to do for years, for the last 4 years, meaning clean house. Go and get these people from in the military who have been there for years, planted by Gulen. They have been climbing up the ranks. Some of them have reached like the lieutenant colonel positions, because that's another thing that Gulen movement does. They are also engaged in long-term strategies like this, infiltrate and climb up the ranks within military and police forces in Turkey, right? So is it possible? I would say yes. It would have been a smart strategy. And guess what? It paid off for Erdogan because he rounded them up, and there is not much public outcry, because if these traitors, right, they attempted this coup, right, trying to overthrow democratically elected regime, democratically elected administration, then they deserve it, right? So you don't hear that outcry. And even the Turkish mainstream media, pro-Gulen ones, they're kind of hushing, because it's like, okay, because he got the public support. See, that's the smart strategy. That's the smart strategy. So that tells me that it is possible that they found out and they said, well, we'll let them, we'll give them enough rope, let them hang themselves. And that opened the road for Erdogan to implement things he wanted to implement previously, but he didn't have enough public support to do it. And he had the media in the opposition of everything he was trying to do.
Sibel, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and bringing us up to date on not only the wonderful things you're doing, but what's actually happening in Turkey, what has happened, what may happen. And it's a model, of course, of the way the U.S. government, as you point out, operates its entire empire and always has. The U.S. believes it has some kind of mandate from God or Satan or somebody to rule the world and the solar system and the universe, I'm sure, too, if they get to that point. So these are a very arrogant bunch. They have their only standard is power and glory and money for themselves, and they have no concerns about anything else. So this is a bad bunch for us and for the world. Thank you for everything you've done and are doing and will do to expose these people, to write about them, their activities in the past, the present, and the future. And we'll, of course, link to everything that you're doing, Sibel. And,
thank you, Lew. And I want to thank you for all you've been doing, because believe me or not, with all the things that have come up, your organization, your news outlet is the first one to come and seek comments and this interview. And you're the one who broadcast our previous interview. If you go and look at our YouTube channel, you will see Lew Rockwell channel is subscribed to by Newsbud Boiling Frogs Post. We are reading your website on daily basis, and I want to commend what you've been doing, and please keep it up.
Sibel, thank you, and you too. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks so much for listening to the Lew Rockwell Show today. Take a look at all the podcasts. There have been hundreds of them. There's a link on the LRC front page. Thank you.